Welcome back to Coachology in 20, where we discuss coaching concepts in 20 minutes. If you're tuned in, please say hi. Let me know where you're tuned in from. If you're new to coaching, get your pads ready, get your tablets ready, whatever you use to make notes and start to jot some things down from today's session. If you're an experienced coach, then get your fingertips ready and share your wisdom, knowledge, and experience in the space so we can learn from each other together. Now, if you are tuning in from Facebook, we've had issues with this reaching Facebook over the past couple of weeks. We've looked into this. Now, if you're tuning in from Facebook, there's an issue to the software that we use. So if you're putting comments in, I'll not be able to see them during the live. I'll have to come back to them after the live. So if you're watching this on Facebook and you want to engage, you want to be part of this live session, then I recommend you switch to YouTube. You can find us on a YouTube channel and watch there. This is where you can engage. If you are on Facebook, I will get back to your questions and comments afterwards to help you with whatever it is you're asking and sharing with us today. So I can see we've got Adele tuned in from South Africa. Thank you, Adele, for being here as always and for supporting these live sessions every week. So last week, we looked at the types of questions we should adopt and avoid as coaches. And this week, we're going to go a little bit further and stepping away from actually listening and the body and questions to looking at body language and what's not being said in our coaching space. How we can start to identify body language, what different signs might mean for us as a coach, and how we can actually introduce our observations into our coaching space. So, the first question I have, I always like to open up with a reflective question for everybody. I want you to think, especially if you're a coach, think about your sessions with your clients. If you're not a coach, maybe think about conversations that you've had with colleagues, friends, your manager. But when has body language uncovered something for you that maybe wasn't easily seen through words? What kind of body language was it that uncovered this for you? So again, you don't have to go detailed to share a lot of private information, but I just want us to start to think about where in our coaching sessions, it's not being the question that we've asked, it's not being about us listening to the words, but it's what we've actually observed and how we've shared that observation and how that's unlocked something new for our clients. So reflect and think about a moment with a client when body language has uncovered something new for you. And then whilst the comments are coming through, and for those of you who haven't got a story to share right now, I want you to ask this question as well, to answer this question. What percentage of communication is actually body language? Do we know? If you don't know, put your guesses in the comments box. What percentage of communication is body language? So I can see Adele's sharing here. Eye movements, it speaks as well. 100%, we're going to talk about eye contact and eye movement as part of body languages. That is definitely a sign that something is maybe different with the client. We're going to cover all this in detail, so please don't worry. But what percentage of communication do we believe is body language? So there's three important factors when it comes to communication. We've got our verbs, our words, the verbal. We've got our tone, the way in which we speak or articulate our words. And then we've got our body language as well. What percentage do we think of communication is body language? Everybody's going off Googling, asking ChatGPT. Razan is saying 55%. That is correct. Oge is saying over 50%. Beautiful. You're all very close. The correct answer, Razan, you were spot on there. The correct answer is 55%. And I'm sure we've all heard at some point in our lives that it's not what we say, it's how we say it. So body language is a huge, important factor of our coaching practice. As coaches, what distinguishes us from the average coaches, the new coaches, to an experienced coach is not just about listening to the words, but observing what's not being said. But we also need to observe what's being said with caution. There's a few rules that we need to follow when bringing in observations around body language into our coaching practice. But first of all, we need to understand why it's important. That's because 55% of communication is through body language. Now, this is quite important for those who are interested in support the growth of AI coaching. You know, if you look at that, only 7% is verbal or through spoken or written words. So as it stands, AI coaching bots can only coach us with 7% of communication. And even that is questionable. And you'll get some people that argue that now think about your Alexa and your Echo Dots, whatever you use around your technology, it can start to identify irritation in your voice or anger. It starts to understand. So they're trying to, the next stage is get technology to a place where it can identify your tone and emotions behind the words that you're saying. But it's a long way off. And as it stands, AI can only coach you with 7% of communication. And that 7% is questionable. You're probably looking at about half of that due to the inaccuracies of AI and where we're actually at with that. So body language is a huge, important part of our coaching. And it's definitely something that AI will not replace in the future. So types of body language. Can anybody remember what types, if you're from Coach Your Minds, I can see we've got a couple of Coach Your Minds coaches tuned in. Maybe you're from a different academy, different organization. Maybe you're learning coaching right now. What types of body language are there? What do we know? Let me know in the comments box. Sports is saying there is nothing AI can't replace. Interesting proposal there. If you believe that AI will replace humans, then you are definitely one of the scaremongers. What types of body language do we believe they are? So I'm going to work through them. The first one is movement of head. So a nod, a shake, a maybe flick of the hair, but general movements of the head are signs of body language. So that's a type of body language. The second is eye contact. Does the client hold a lot of eye contact with us? Are they looking away? What do these mean? So eye contact is a form of body language. Facial expressions, how the client is responding to our questions, to the words and information that they're sharing, what's on their face. Are they furrowing their brow? Are they smiling? Are they pulling a bit of a mean face? What's their facial expressions behind the topic and the agenda that we're talking about? Body posture is another one. So how are they sat? Have they got their arms folded? Are they slouched in their chair? Are they got a confident body posture? So body posture is another form of body language. Hand gestures. So are they got clenched fists? Is their hands open? Or maybe they're thinking on their chin. Different ways in which they move their hands. And finally, fidgeting. So fidgeting with themselves, maybe playing with a pen, playing with something on the side, maybe fidgeting about. So just generally feeling a bit agitated in the space. So those are the 6 types of body language. And Razan's saying facial expressions, posture, eye movement, gestures. Brilliant. You've got a majority of them through there. That's absolutely brilliant, Razan. Adele is saying hands, arms, and shoulders. So, yep, the way in which we put our body posture can also be signs of body language. Now, I'm going to talk about fidgeting. I'm going to talk about all of this and how we bring this into coaching in a second. I just want us to recap on the different types of body language. So thank you for sharing that. Sports, I'm not going to entertain a conversation around whether or not AI and what it will replace. Drop me a message afterwards and we can have the conversation. But like I said, AI will not replace humans. And if you think that, then you live in a bit of a crazy mindset, and you need to start to look at the actual accuracy and data behind what AI can actually produce right now. Again, a lot of what's out there is just fear and scaremongering. So what could body language be telling us? I'm going to give you a couple of examples right now for you to reflect upon as a coach, and I want you to think about what it could be telling us. So Razan is saying fidgeting is interesting. I do not usually pay attention to it. We're going to talk about that in a moment, Razan, because you're making a really great point around that. So thank you for that. We'll come back to fidgeting and what that actually means. So what might a nod or a shake of the head tell us? What might a nod or a shake tell us? I can see sports is definitely not getting it to go. I hope AI replaces you so I can have a more constructive conversation in my lives. Okay, saying agreeing, understanding. Yep. So when we nod, it's going to show agreement. When we shake, it's going to show disagreement. Adele saying agreement or disagreement. Excellent. What might a client looking away when talking tell us? Razan says confusion. So yep, a couple of head movements can be confused, could show and illustrate confusion. Client might not be expressing that they're confused. They might not be expressing that they agree, but a nod, shake will show that. What might a client looking away when talking tell us? So maybe they're talking to us like this, and they're telling us certain things, sharing their agenda. Or you could ask them a question and they're doing this. You know, it's all in body language. Adele saying thinking. Razan saying thinking. Oge saying could also be cultural. It could be cultural as well, yep. Cultural factors to come into here. And we're going to get onto the important things to think about when it looks at body language in a moment, because there's certain rules. We're just getting an understanding of how body language can give us just straightforward signs. So thinking, the other thing it could be if they're looking away all the time is that they're distracted. Client might not be paying attention if they're looking over here, looking over there. You'll see sometimes maybe clients are on their phone, they're doing this, or they're busy doing this and they're on another platform or window in the session. So signs of that they're looking away could also mean that they're distracted, or it could just be if you're thinking. So I'm a thinker. So when I've been in my coaching sessions, if you've coached me before, you'll know this in one of our practicums. If you ask me a question and I need time to think and process, I'm going to look away and I'm going to think. I'm going to process what I want to say before I come and say it. So again, it doesn't necessarily mean nothing. It means something all the time, but we need to be able to understand how body language can give us signals in our communication. Next one, what might a client fidgeting tell us? Going back to Razan, she mentioned earlier on that she generally tends to ignore this as a body language. But what might fidgeting tell us? Okay, saying distracted, nervousness. Adele saying nervousness. Yep, could identify a bit of anxiety. You know, if they're fidgeting a lot, maybe they're desperate to get out. Maybe they're feeling a bit uncomfortable in our space. So lots of things it could be telling us. But have you noticed that on each of these questions, Razan saying uncomfortable, yep, they could feel uncomfortable in the space with us. But did you notice that on each of these examples and the questions that I just asked, I highlighted one word, the most important word in this, which is might. So you can see on the screen. Why did I highlight the word might? Because the number one rule in coaching, when we are observing body language, is that we are looking for body language signals that depart from the client's normal behavior. So for example, coming back to fidgeting, you might have a client that has ADHD. I've had a client with ADHD in the past, and that's how they like to sit in their space. They have a fidget toy or something in their hand that they use just to stay focused within that space. So the word might is important because we are not looking to become a detective in this space where we're trying to observe what every body language signal is telling us. We are there to look at the body language signals that depart from the client's norm. We want to pick up a shift in energy, a shift in their behavior, a shift in how they're holding themselves in our sessions that's been different from the previous sessions that we've held with them. It's not just a case of looking and trying to understand what every single body language signal is giving us. That's very, very important, and it's our number one rule. And I can see some good comments coming through. August saying I was going to add medical conditions can cause some of those signals. 100%. A lot of these signals could be normal for some of our clients. We're looking for what departs from the norm. Razan is saying observations opens room for curiosity. It does indeed. So it's all about observing that space. Adele saying we could make assumptions. Really good point, Adele, because that is the next rule that we have. We should never make assumptions when we are observing body language. Rule number 2, never make assumptions. We should always explore and introduce the observation into the space to allow our clients to come to their own conclusions to what their body language means. And there's no harm. A lot of coaches I've found sometimes find it a little bit challenging to bring that observation into that space and to highlight the fact that every time we talk about someone's manager, they fold their arms, or every time we talk about this topic, they look away. It's okay for us to bring that to that space, because it could be nothing, and it's not going to break the rapport by asking this, because the client will turn around, oh, it's just nothing. I just, I was just thinking, I was reflecting. They're going to tell us honestly about what that observation actually means. We should never make the assumptions when we're looking at how we observe body language. We should always explore it. So how do we do that as a coach? How do we start to explore? How do we introduce these observations into our coaching space? So first of all, we could do something like this. So a couple of examples here. Now, this is a non-exhaustive list. This is not the way that I'm saying the best way to go and do this. This is to give you some illustrations, some examples, so you can think about how you can introduce your observations into your coaching space that don't have your opinions, that don't have your judgment, and don't have your assumptions. So here's an example here. I noticed that every time you talk about your manager, you fold your arms, you appear quite reserved. Do you think this means something? Now, notice what we're doing here. We're highlighting the observation, and then we're asking the client what they think it means. We're not jumping to the conclusion of what we think it means. We're not jumping in and says, oh, you've got your arms folded, you feel reserved. You must have a bit of a bad relationship with your manager. We don't do this as a coach. We don't give assumptions. We don't give our judgments. We don't make our own conclusions. Very important that we're doing this in a way that invites the client to come to their own conclusions. Oge saying, I had a client whose eyes watered a lot, and it was important for her to share she was not crying, but had blocked tear ducts. Thank you for sharing that, Oge, because that is a wonderful example as well, that this is normal behavior for the client. If we've got a really good rapport, we can have those open and honest conversations about how that space and what these body language signs are showing us. So it's really brilliant to have that deep level rapport, so we can share that with the clients, and the clients can open up to us. Next, another example here. Again, this is not the most powerful way to do it. This is just examples for you to think about the process when you are looking at those body language signals and how you introduce them into your coaching practice. So it's interesting that when you talk about your relationship with your father, you look away. Is there any particular reason why? So when we're reflecting back here, we're stating the observation, we're keeping it very objective in what we're noticing, and then we're asking the question that links them to come to their own conclusion. There's no assumption in there, and there's no judgment. Roseanne is saying, is it okay to ask a closed question here? I usually ask it as open-ended. If we're asking a closed question here, then generally, so that's actually a good point, because you're doing a clarifying. Does this mean something to you? Yes or no? So what does this mean to you? But we need to look at the first example I'm giving you is a clarifying question. Could this mean something? Is there any particular reason why? Is more open. So I'm just giving you different ways in which you can ask the question, keeping it open. And remember, we can ask a closed question where it's clarifying. But general rule, and really good observation there, Roseanne, is we should keep it open 9 times out of 10. But asking, could this mean something, is just a way of you testing the waters that you are on the lines of observing a change in the body language. Because the client could come back and say, no, it means absolutely nothing. It's just how I'm feeling today. And that's going to open up a whole new conversation with the client. Or they could say, yes, it does. And we can follow up the question, what do you think this means? But really good observation. Finally, again, this is another clarity question here, or it can open them up to a little bit more. But whenever you bring up this difficult time, I noticed you pick up your pen and you start to play with it. Do you think there's a reason for that? So again, we're trying to clarify whether or not our observation is valid. It's something that is felt. And I'm going to talk about this in just a moment's time as well, so we can start to understand a little bit more about this. But we're clarifying whether or not we're on the right path of thinking that there is a change in the behavior and the body language signals here. We're clarifying before we go deep and make an assumption, because there is a risk that if we ask an open question, that open question holds an assumption or a judgment. So it's always good to look at how you clarify this. Why? So why do we do this? Why are we observing? And this is the point I want to come back to here, is clients are generally, I found in my own coaching practice, 9 times out of 10, that if we think of ourselves as humans, and when people highlight our behaviors and our body language signals to ourselves, we're generally unaware of our body language. We don't realize that we're folding our arms when we're talking about our manager. We don't realize that we're looking away or looking down when we're talking about our relationship. 9 times out of 10, it's subconscious, it's unconscious. We're not aware of what we're doing. And this is one of the great benefits of coaching, because a little observation in body language signals and changing from the norm and how the client has shown up with us, that in itself can really put a spotlight to a really detailed and open conversation that could lead to an aha moment that the client's never received or achieved before. Oge is saying this sounds like the observation has to be over a number of times rather than just seeing the body language once. Now, 100%, that's a really good point to add in there, Oge, as well. You know, we're going to come across as a bit of an annoying coach if every time the client changes something, gives us an observation in terms of body language, and we bring it up and we bring it into or introduce into our coaching session after the first time it's happened. We need to, what it's all about here is spotting patterns and spotting trends, or a change or a shift in the energy. It might not be so visible in terms of a head nod or one of the 6 different types of body language I've mentioned, but we could just feel that the client's energy is off. Maybe they're not as open and talkative as they have been in previous sessions. Maybe not bringing the passion and the energy towards their goals. Maybe they're feeling a little bit low, giving us short responses. This is something we can also introduce and observe and share with the client. I've noticed a shift in your energy in today's session. Normally you're really passionate, talking about your goals and your objectives, and I'm feeling like, you know, the responses here are a little bit low in volume or a little bit short. Do you think there's a reason for it? Is something going on right now for you that you'd like to use this space to discuss? So there's different ways in which we can bring that in. So it's about spotting trends and patterns. And the big benefit of this is that it's most of the time clients are unaware. 9 times out of 10, they're unaware of their body language. It's unconscious, it's subconscious behavior. And finally, if you've got any questions, you can drop them in the comments box. But I have one final reflective question for you to take away as a coach. So I've seen we've got a spike of people tuned in. If you want to go back and watch the replay, we've talked about the importance of body language in coaching. We've looked at the 6 types briefly of body language. We've looked at what certain body languages might be telling us, and we've looked at how we can introduce these with a few examples into our coaching space. But I'd like you to take this away and reflect about how you can introduce this into your coaching space. Remember not to add judgment and not to add assumptions. Remember the number one rule when it comes to observing body language is that we are looking for the signals that depart from the norm of the client, not just for signals in general. We're not becoming a body language detective here and highlighting every shift in their human body and the way in which they're presenting themselves to us. So it's time for your questions, but the final reflective question that I have for you, and I'd like you to really reflect on this and take away, is we've talked a lot about the body language of the client, but what is your body language telling your clients? How are you showing up? How are you communicating your questions, creating that space of psychological safety with your body language? Because we need to also understand on the other side of things that we're communicating to our clients with 55% of body language as well. So how are you showing up? What's the energy that you're bringing? What's your posture? What's your eye contact? Are you fidgeting? How are you showing up for your clients? Augusto is saying, I sometimes find it helpful to start a session by asking how they are showing up so I have a sense of how they are feeling. That's really great, okay. And there's some great tools. We can do it generically, or there's some great tools we can introduce. I used to like to bring in the past motion pictures. So I like to use props when I'm doing coaching in person, and you can get a series of different pictures, and just as a bit of an icebreaker to help them just drop everything that they've been going on that day and become, let go of the heaviness of everything that's going on at work or whatever they've got going on, to focus on the coaching session. And you lay out the pictures and you ask them to choose one that represents their emotions, and you get into a bit of a conversation why, and it's a good way to prop that through. So it's great that you're doing that, okay, because it's really good to temperature check their emotions, where their headspace is at, and really understand the direction of the conversation at the outset. Really brilliant stuff. Razan saying clients feel really heard. Someone who is really paying attention and cares. It is so powerful for aha moments. It really is. When you observe that body language and you introduce it into your coaching space without judgment, without opinion, without assumption. It's just, this is what can open up a whole new conversation and really lead the clients down to an aha moment, or guide the clients. We need to be careful with my articulation, the words I use. Guide the clients to an aha moment, to the questions. So thank you so much for everybody who is tuned in. If you're not part of Coaching Minds and you want to learn further, you don't want to wait till next Monday for our next Coachology session, then what you can do is you can actually scan the QR code in the corner. That will take you to our new website with our brand new page of free coaching resources. We've got assessments on there. We've got some tools that you can use on yourself. We've got a number of articles you can read, and you can go back and watch the replays of these series. This is episode 15, I believe, or are we on episode 14? Episode 14, episode 15 is next week. So you can go back and watch the 13 episodes. Or if you want something that is more physical, then you can scan the QR code on the screen. This goes to our Coaching Essentials book. We've designed this book, which forms part of our program, as a way for coaches to really understand if coaching is for them, understand what coaching is really about before they invest thousands of dollars and thousands of pounds into an expensive coaching course. So you can get the book there, or you can access our free coaching resources. The choice is yours. And I'd just like to say a huge thank you to everybody who's tuned in. A huge thank you to Adele, Oge, Razan for your comments and engaging with the questions that I've had today. I look forward to seeing you next Monday, where we're going to start to explore and build upon this feeding back into our coaching space and looking at the 5 principles that we need to apply to reflect back to our clients in our coaching sessions. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week ahead, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you.